Hello, friends of the internet. My name is Austin Belzer, and welcome back to the Austin B Media podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the supposedly final entry in the Mission Impossible film franchise that has been led by Tom Cruise since 1996. Yes, we are talking about Mission Impossible, the so-called Final Reckoning. And my guest today is none other than Ben Miller. Ben runs the site Ice Cream for Freaks and contributes to the Film Experience and Cinema Scholar. He is also a member of the Dallas-Fort Worth Film Critics Association, as well as the International Film Society Critics Association, which I am also a part of. Ben, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. Such a pleasure to be aboard. Such a fun film to talk about and the ins and outs of everything. It's going to be a fun time. Quick note real quick. I went to a screening last night of a different film. And the marquee at the Angelica, where I was at the screening, had The Final Reckoning, but it spelled reckoning with a W. And I assume that is a theater employee who did not necessarily like the movie, so decided to take the piss out of it and put the W up there. But I just thought I'd note that before we started.
It's hilarious. It is like the almost Petty Betty response to not liking a movie.
It really is. Really. Like, even if you don't like the movie, it's not like egregiously terrible. I don't know why you just but whatever. I mean, little things that probably people don't notice.
Yeah, I would, if I was that theater employee, the most I would do to pass shade would be the so-called Final Reckoning, because I'm like,
something like that. They're selling it really hard, like it's going to be the last one. But it makes too much sense for it not to be the case, especially since, again, it made a ton of money again. Mm-hmm. So if it keeps making... Now, that being said, this is one of the most expensive movies in the history of film. So you kind of have the push and the pull of that, but who can really say?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it in our discussion, but... before we get into that, anything you'd like to recommend before we get there?
Yes. So I'm in the midst of my long-standing Oscar completism. I'm now to the point where I'm not like, oh, I'm hitting the big things. It's like, no, I'm way past the big things, and I'm like in the little obscure minutia of these type of films. And I just completed my watch of the films from 1955, and I watched this French film called The Sheep Has Five Legs. It was very, very impossible to find. The version I found was in French, dubbed in Russian with American subtitles, so with English subtitles. So it was very difficult to get my hands on. But that being said, when I watched it, I did have a very good time. It's about a guy who had five children. They were all born at the same time, quintuplets, and they kind of scattered, and they wanted to bring them back together. And it's kind of like these little vignettes, and the dad and all the boys are played by the same actor, Fernandel. It's a fun, silly time, just an excuse for them to kind of get into little hijinks. And it's a little hornier for a movie from 1955 than you'd expect, but fun time. If you have a chance to find it, which is, like I said, I had to really dig deep to find it. So if you can find it, it's a fun time.
Yeah, did you have to meet somebody in a back alley like the early days of the Star Wars holiday special?
It wasn't that bad, but it did take even the places that I usually go to that might not even be legal, even those didn't have it. So I really had to really stretch my mettle. That being said, whenever I was in high school, I lived overseas, and half the movies we watched were definitely pirated from a guy who sold us DVDs out of a perfume shop. So I mean, I've lived that life, feeling like back alley. Like, I watched Spider-Man at my house 3 days after it came out, but we were in a foreign country, so I kind of give myself a little break for that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's circumstances, right? So.
Yep. But I get it, but whatever.
But yeah, if I can if I can track it down, if Google doesn't just spit in my face when I try and track it down.
And that was even the hardest part, because the English version of The Sheep Has Five Legs I couldn't find. I had to figure out what the French version was called, and that's how I was able to track it down, which was even more complex. So it's a big mess.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Mine is much easier to find.
Yes.
My recommendation, and I'm surprised I haven't talked about it in all the podcast episodes I've recorded this week. This is my third podcast recording this week. I'm breaking the illusion for the viewers. who are watching this 3 weeks from now. But I watched Black Bag, the new Steven Soderbergh movie.
Yeah. A swift adult entertainment.
Yeah, it's kind of on brand since we're talking about a spy movie. It is Michael Fassbender and Kate Blanchett play a couple that are also spies. Michael Fassbender is basically told there's a mole. You've got to find the mole. Classic spy setup, and the whole movie is about who is the mole.
It's so funny. It's so funny, interestingly, talking about that compared to this, because Mission Impossible is so interested in the actual action and the spy, and Black Bag is the exact opposite of that. It's like, no, we don't really care about the ins and outs and the minutia of like spying, hiding around corners, ready to shoot people. And it's like, no. This is much more about the geopolitical side of being a spy and your relationships and have that kind of stuff. And I would never say Soderbergh and Christopher McQuarrie are the same kind of directors, because I cannot imagine they're intersecting ever really. But I mean, it's two totally different ways to approach the same exact genre. It's fascinating. That's a nice little that's a nice compliment to what we're talking about.
Yeah, and it reminded me a lot of last year's The Killer, David Fincher directed. In fact, it's a very David Fincher-esque movie. It almost doesn't feel like a Soderbergh movie, which is interesting. I don't even think he shot this on the iPhone like he usually does. So,
really, well,
at least it didn't look.
It's really good looking, regardless. It did look like a Soderbergh film, if that makes any sense. So, I mean, regardless, it works.
Yeah, it works. But check it out. I rented it, but it's on Peacock Premium, which is, I think, on sale right now. Well, it won't be when this goes up, but illusion broken again. But it's $79.99 a year or something like that. But on sale, it's like $25. So if you're able to break space-time continuum and somehow get that $24.99 deal, do it.
By all means, yes.
Yeah. I'll probably take Peacock up on that offer in between recording and this going live, because I do want to watch a few other movies on there, like Love Hurts and Hard Eyes, I think is on there. Dogman. Anyways, that could be its whole different podcast. But
sure.
With recommendations out of the way, let's get into talking about the film we're here to talk about, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which...
Let's do it.
Which, my goodness, can we come up with like shorter titles? Can we do like what the Gears of War games did, where on the 5th game they just said, we're just going to drop Gears of War. We're just going to call it Gears 5.
It's funny. I've noticed, especially in marketing these days, whenever they do, like, Final Destination Bloodlines is out, but whenever they talk about it, they'll just say Final Destination. And because you don't need to necessarily know the Bloodlines part, or you don't need to know the Fast and Furious 9 or 10, Fast X or whatever. They'll just go Fast and Furious. And then everybody's like, cool, new Fast and Furious movie. Like, that's kind of the advantage of a built-in franchise like this. And Mission Impossible has that. But I mean, they really did go out of their way to say Final Reckoning, Final Reckoning, Final Reckoning. And kind of like trying to hammer home the point, trying to hammer home this is the last one, guys. This is the last one. And yes. So, but yeah, it is a little long-winded. It has a colon, it has a slash. The first one was a mess because it was Dead Reckoning Part 1. And I'm like, where's a colon? Is there another colon, or are there 2 hyphens? The ins and outs of somebody who writes too much.
Yeah, and it messes up SEO so bad when you have a colon in there, because
it really does.
For anyone who knows anything about SEO, a colon does not exist in a URL scheme. So you, instead of doing mission : impossible, it's mission - impossible - the final. Or if I was doing this URL for the movie, it would be mission - impossible - the - final - reckoning -
Yeah, big mess.
So yeah, it's a mess. But I just say that because I think when I refer to these movies, I just go MI1, MI2, MI3. In fact, I think in the official posters for MI3, it was just MI3, with like 3 little Roman numerals.
Yeah.
So I much prefer that, especially with Fallout. I basically refer to that one as Mission MI6,
Yeah.
which has another meaning, but for the spy community, but and is by far the best one. But anyways, I'll get to that. So, talking about the series as a whole, what drew you to the series in the first place?
I mean, it's kind of one of those things. Like if you talk about I always use this example with like the Toy Story franchise. It's like Toy Story is meant for people my age. It's not meant for kids anymore because Toy Story 1 came out when I was a very specific age, and then I've grown with it as it's continued. And it's like, well, I was so locked in on the first one. At this point, I'm too pot committed to it. It's like Toy Story 5 is going to come out, and my kids are going to be teenagers, and I'm still going to be like, yeah, I'm just very excited for Toy Story 5, even though I'll be well into my 30s and 40s. So I mean, it's the same thing with kind of Mission Impossible. Whenever it came out, I was Mission Impossible 1 came out when I was 10. So probably a little over my. I remember being really confused by the first one. I was like, this is a lot. This is a lot going on here. And then being 14 when the second one came out, and it's like Limp Bizkit, Cool Things of Mission Impossible. It was on TV a lot, at least where I lived, and so it's like you saw it a lot. And then like it kind of shifts in that Mission Impossible 3. So it's kind of like it's always been around, but it never really had the people always view it as kind of this. Oh, this has always been a thing. It's always been a chance to be a franchise. It's like, I mean, everybody dogs on Mission Impossible 2, but it was the highest grossing movie of 2000. So it's, you kind of take that in stride. And then Mission Impossible 3 was kind of a reimagining of everything and introduced the world to J.J. Abrams as a big budget filmmaker. And then it kind of shifted the idea of what Mission Impossible could be. And from then on, it kind of took on its own life. So it's something that I've never been like, oh, I haven't caught up on the new Mission Impossible yet. It's like, no, I've seen every entry multiple times. So it's been one of those things. Like, I'm a big fan of pretty much every one except number 2. Every one except number 2 is very solidly made and if not exceptionally made. So it's one of those things that it's always been kind of in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting you use the Toy Story analogy because that's always been in my life because it literally came out a month before I was born. So
yeah.
As much as I, say I don't want to see Toy Story 4, I'm seated day one. If they do a 20th anniversary thing this year, I'll be there. But with Mission Impossible, it's entirely different because I was one when Mission Impossible 1 came out. So I caught up with it much later. I caught up with it with Ghost Protocol, and that was my introduction. I watched Ghost Protocol in theaters, and then not knowing anything. So the ending of Ghost Protocol was very confusing for me. Like that whole bar scene was like, why is Michelle Monaghan in this? What is she doing? Same thing with Rogue Nation. Went to the theaters weekend 1. Fallout was the one I actually went to see on my own in like a Dolby Cinema, I think. I remember getting like the poster or something like that. And yeah, I from Ghost Protocol, I've seen every single one in theaters, weekend 1 or somewhere around there. I now own all of them, but I don't remember when I did my rewatch or my watch of the first 3. I think maybe it was for Dead Reckoning because I did a podcast with Pedro Lima, who I just had on for Warfare. We discussed Warfare.
Gotta love Pedro.
Yep. And we talked about Dead Reckoning. I think that's probably when I went back and watched all of them all over again. And so, yeah, it wasn't an ever-present thing. It always was there because, it was there a year after I was born. But, like, it wasn't something I was following until Ghost Protocol came out in, like, 2012, something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting to hear us talk about it. Especially... this kind of leads into my next question. Which one is your favorite and why?
It's got to be Fallout. Not because
agreed.
It's one of those things where they were searching around for so long to figure out exactly what this kind of series was. And like they had an idea with the first one, but that was much more of a De Palma film than you ever realized it was. And then, with the thousands of Dutch angles and the more like a paranoia thriller and all that kind of thing. The second one was really bastardized for the culture and Tom Cruise's weird kind of late 90s, early 2000 persona. And then 3, they're just trying to get it back to basics, essentially. They kind of made it work. 4 is where they started to kind of figure, like Ghost Protocol, Ghost Protocol is where they kind of figured out, okay, this is kind of the direction we need to be more focused on the team, the stunts, the grandioseness of it all. Rogue Nation's where they figured it out. There's like, this is the formula. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. This is how we need to approach it. And Fallout is just Rogue Nation on steroids. And everything that Rogue Nation does right, Fallout just kicks it up a notch and nails it even better. So it's just everything, the full potential of what these movies can be is what Fallout is. It's performances, the ensemble, the villains, the settings, the stunts. Like you can, especially in Fallout, you can point to, oh, these 5 set pieces, and you're like, oh, but I also forgot this set piece and this set piece and all this kind of stuff. And it's not like the one thing. Yeah. So I mean, that's the one. I think it seems pretty universal that that's the one that everybody's like, that's the best one.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. Because I think I hadn't quite felt an adrenaline rush like coming out of Fallout, except for after this movie, but we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, it was just like, this is, I forget who in our critic groups coined this phrase, but gonzo cinema. It just goes balls out with action. And it's just like, hey, you want action? Here's Henry Cavill reloading his arms. Does it make sense? No. Is it cool? Yeah. So I think that's when it fully leaned into all of that, where it's like, let's drop all the nuance and just say, no, we are a full-blooded action film. No sci-fi like there was in MI3. No, what was it? Dueling like fights on motorbikes. Or whatever that was.
Jumping at each other on motorcycles, or I mean, even the kind of the preposterousness was not as preposterous as you would expect it to be. Like it's very gritty in a very specific way, but it's also funny. Like it's just nonstop entertaining. Like, and the way the camera moves in that movie like few others, and it's just from the first moment you're just like, man, I am so on board with this and everything about it. You're just like, the only real criticism I have is that opening sequence that I completely forget about. But after the credits, I'm just like, man, I'm so locked in to everything in Paris is perfect. Everything in London is perfect. Everything, that the Pakistan India border clash, perfect. All the action in between. Cavill's a great, and it always makes me laugh anytime I rewatch Fallout, just because I realize Henry Cavill. This is the movie that ruined Superman's upper lip. It always makes me laugh, just because they wouldn't let him shave that mustache, because he had to keep doing reshoots on Mission Impossible, so they wouldn't let him shave the mustache, which continually makes me laugh. But regardless, it's just everything the movie could be, and it really solidified Tom Cruise is nuts in the kind of way, like nuts in a good way, because obviously the broken ankle, and that was the big thing. Like, he broke his ankle and he kept going, and they took 8 weeks off for it to heal and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, it's I don't think there'll be a pinnacle that will ever top it.
Yeah, I don't think there will either. I think even his rumored space movie that he's talking about doing, I think even if he straps himself to a rocket that is launching, I'm just gonna be like, yeah, no, this still isn't gonna top anything you did in Fallout.
Yeah. It just seems more human, I guess.
Yeah. It's not removed, I think. But getting to the final reckoning, what were your expectations going into it?
So I was tempered, because I definitely saw Dead Reckoning as the weakest non Mission Impossible 2 film, because my biggest problem with it is that, for all the shenanigans with face masks and, the technology and all those, like, it all seemed rather real, kind of realistic enough. And despite all that technology, all the bad guys were humans. Having a non-human be a literal entity being the villain really took away from the tangible aspect of this. Like, it's everything is very, you're searching for a guy, you're searching for a thing, and it's like, oh, we got to stop the entity. It's like, well, what does that mean? Like, it's kind of like they painted themselves into a corner with this villain, and they probably were too pot committed to it after a point and being like, oh crap, we probably need to scrap this and turn it around. But there's like, no, we've done all this work, we have all this stuff. Esai Morales is trying really hard. Like, fine, we're going to do that. So I was very, like, despite the awesome train sequence, obviously the breathtaking jump off the mountain, all that kind of stuff. That's great. All the action is stellar. All the rest of it is preposterous and stupid. And so coming into the final reckoning, I'm like, okay, so they're gonna keep going with this. They can't switch boats midstream. They have to continue on this entity timeline. And I'm not going to love that, but they're gonna have to keep going with it. So what's the way forward? And I guess it's probably a good thing that I kind of went in with that mentality, because without that mentality, I'd have been like, okay, let's see what you got this new one. And if they'd have done AI again or something like that, I'm just like, oh, come on, it'd probably piss me off more. But knowing going in, it's like they have to figure out the entity part and they have to fix it and all this kind of stuff. So I went in with tempered expectations, and it was much more rewarding with that kind of lowered sensibility. There's still problems with the film that I have, but I'm going to borrow from Sean Fennessy, but it has some of the lowest lows, but has some of the highest. So those highs are kind of what I take away from it, especially those last 40 minutes. Those last 40 minutes may be some of the best stuff in the world they've done in the whole series. Those last 40, from the second Gabriel essentially runs away and Tom Cruise has to chase, that sequence is pretty much, from the end of the movie, is pretty much perfect. Everything else, there's a lot of like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah. I think I'm very much in the same boat. I think I said before the screening, I wish I'd recorded this so I knew what I exactly said, but I think I was saying in my mind, please don't suck, please don't suck, please don't suck, please don't suck.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I shelled out the big bucks for the IMAX screening. I was way too close.
I was also at IMAX. I was also at IMAX, and that's quite the experience.
Yeah, I was literally like this the whole time,
just looking straight up, and yeah.
I mean, they didn't have like recliner seats in this one too, so I was like, you kind of have to rock back like this.
Sure.
But AMC, like, can you make your website more intuitive to be like, hey, this is how much viewing space you'll have or something, especially on IMAX, because the diagram they have is deceiving, because it made it look like it was halfway back in the theater, not like third or fourth row.
I like this idea. This is like baseball games. Whenever you get a baseball seat, they're just like, okay, this is the view from your seat. We should do the same thing with your movie theater seats.
Yes,
I don't hate that idea.
Yeah, because it's like I get in there and I'm immediately just like, oh crap, this is a 3-hour movie. This is not going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was fine. It was fine for what it was, and it wasn't like a huge IMAX screen. So I was just like, so it wasn't that bad, because if I went to my regular, like, I do have a real IMAX screen near me. If I'd done that, that would have been like, that would have been insane. But format stuff aside, I share a lot of your same qualms with Dead Reckoning. In a series that is full of human bad guys, why are we discussing an entity that it somehow knows everything all the time? Like it almost felt like Tom Cruise looked at ChatGPT one day, like did his first prompt and said, "All right, I got to make a movie about this or something."
Yeah.
Like it just felt that way to me.
It does feel very like pointed. Like I need to say something about this. Like okay, why? Like it's and I'm not gonna point to Cruz and say Cruz did this or McQuarrie did this
Right.
or whatever. Maybe there's a I'm sure I know they're very collaborative and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that's the case. I think it's just they ran out of I what is more devious than the last thing? What's the next thing? And I guess they kind of view it as like, well, the unknown or this thing you can't stop or how to stop, and it's infected everywhere, and this it's just kind of silly like that. But I mean, it's one of those things where you make it a human, like even with the entity, you still have Gabriel floating around because he has to be because there has to be a human face to put it to.
Yeah.
Like you can't just have this thing out there in the world because it's not just evil for the sake of evil. It has to have a reason. So they always have to put a human face on it. And I think that's a problem.
Well, and the thing is, they brought back, Kittredge from the original Mission Impossible. They brought back all these characters from the previous movies.
Yep.
It's like, okay, you have a compelling villain. Like you could make Kittredge the villain.
Yeah. There are ways to do this that they did not. They got really committed to something they didn't need to commit to.
Yeah. But for my full thoughts on Dead Reckoning, I think I think the Pedro Lima podcast episode we did when Dead Reckoning came out, probably the best way to get my full thoughts on that.
Okay.
But I guess really quick before we get into the nitty gritty stuff about like specific things about Final Reckoning, any thoughts coming out of the theater for Final Reckoning?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, okay, well, in the term Final Reckoning, like I think it's pretty well established at this point that it might be the words the Final Reckoning, but it's like everybody's like, who are we kidding here? And the door is still open. This is not like everybody kind of compares this to Bond because they're like, oh, No Time to Die. You kill Bond at the end, and then you can move on with and tell other stories, or you have to figure out something else. They don't necessarily have to figure out something else. Like if Tom Cruise comes back, it's not that big of it wouldn't be a surprise. So, I mean, it's one of those things where if there's more, it wouldn't surprise me, and if they don't make another one, they also wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I will push back on that a little bit and say I think they may have written themselves a little too much into a corner by the ending of this movie. But as I'm sure we'll talk about in spoilers, there's a lot of stuff from previous Mission Impossible things that tie into this. And it's just like, okay, it's almost like I'm gonna bring back the Toy Story analogy. It would be this. Like if they announced a new Mission Impossible tomorrow, it would be the same reaction people had when Pixar announced Toy Story 4.
It's like you wrapped it up. You don't need to have another one.
Yeah.
But they're good. And yeah, I agree. I always kind of point to is like, well, money. Like that's just kind of the thing they don't want to give up on it. But at the same time, I think Cruise is better served doing other stuff at this point.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, and on the notion of like all the times they say Final Reckoning, by the way, that was one thing where I'm like, is this a reshoot where once they knew the title, they're like, this is your Final Reckoning, Ethan. This is the nation's Final Reckoning. This is the world's Final Reckoning. And I'm like, dude, we get it. It's the name of the movie.
Yeah, it's one of those things where that's always going to be the case because I mean, obviously it wasn't initially supposed to be because it was supposed to be Dead Reckoning Part 2, presumably. So I mean, it's one of those things that they probably once they figured it out, like you said, they probably went back and reshot it. but it's just kind of silly.
And the worst part is it's painfully obvious that it was either ADR'd or reshot, all those scenes. Because anytime they say Final Reckoning, either the shot from the previous thing, either A, doesn't match up, or B, it like cuts to some CGI thing of well, I don't want to spoil that. So
Yeah.
so yeah, those were my thoughts coming out of the theater. Really, it just really wanted to hammer home this is the final reckoning. I do think, and maybe we'll talk about this in spoilers, I could have done with the without the entire first act being a recap of everything that's happened up until this point.
It did not need to be nearly 3 hours. You could have made it a tight 2.
Yeah,
and I don't
easily.
think you could have missed much. I don't think you could have missed much. So I mean, if you make it a tight 2, that makes it extremely thrilling, much tighter, a lot less like, yeah. There's that scene. I'm sure we'll get into it, but there's a scene in when there were their, cruises in front of all the government bigwigs, and it takes 20 minutes. And I think you could have probably had it 5. Like, you don't need that. But I mean, they just essentially they wanted the return on their investment, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, because I was sitting there like, okay, are they going to do like a previously on Mission Impossible thing?
Yeah.
And they did it, and I'm like, oh, we're still going. Oh, we're still going. Yeah. When is the movie going to start? Do I need to go back into the lobby, get some popcorn, go to the bathroom? Because it was that long. It was. I was.
Yeah.
Anyways, I feel like if streaming shows that are 7 hours or more can get it done in 2 minutes, I feel like an eight movie franchise can do it within 15. But anyways, I guess the other thought was we'll dive a little bit more into this in spoilers, but I do not think they did the entity any service at all in this movie. I don't think they resolve any of the Dead Reckoning stuff, but I'll get into that pretty shortly here. But other than that, any standout moments from the movie?
But like I said, the last 40 minutes are pretty unimpeachable. Like the last action sequences, playing everything that happens in the Doomsday Bunker, which is a terrible name, but all that kind of stuff. So I mean, that is pretty flawless. But the obviously the submarine search is pretty great, pretty captivating. And I imagine a bulk of the budget was taken up in that submarine search, because there was you could tell it's just a lot of work. Like the staging of that looked very professional and very complex and very expensive and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really, really, really cool set piece. It all kind of ends up for naught. I mean, it does play in the plot, but I mean, it's like you look back and you're like, why was he in the submarine? And you're like, oh yeah, he did that thing, and then you just forget why he had that thing, and then you're like, oh yeah, that thing, and then at the end of the movie, you're like, oh, that thing. I guess it played a factor. Like it's just all it's the what's the Chinatown water rights? It's the catalyst to move the plot forward. So I mean, that's the thing that had to be there. So I get it. But it's just an excuse to have this awesome set piece, and that was really awesome. But until it got to that submarine sequence, there was nothing happening. There was a lot of nothing. It was a lot of there. Why is this going on? Like even we'll get into the spoilers of the early part. Even that, it's like, oh, I forgot that happened. Like all that kind of stuff. Like it's all just kind of all after like it spin its wheels till it gets to the thing it needs to get to.
Yeah. And you were talking about the sub sequence, and that was actually where I chose to take my bathroom break.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's any spoilers. He's trying to squeeze into a tight space, and I'm like, all right, this is taking too long. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. What?
Yeah.
And thankfully the restroom, I guess, like the way the theater was set up, the IMAX is in its own like little part of the theater. It's like a dedicated wing of the theater. So
Yeah.
the restrooms are like right there, so you can still hear what's going on. It's like, okay, cool. If I ever watch an IMAX movie there again, assuming it wasn't like this and didn't just have score during that scene, which was kind of annoying, but I get it. It's an action scene type thing.
Sure.
But I had assurances that like, hey, if I go see an IMAX movie there again, I can at least go to the bathroom and not feel like I'm missing anything. So that's kind of nice.
I agree.
So yeah, I think getting to I think we've already talked pretty much about what we don't like and like about the movie, pretty much.
Mhm.
So I think now would probably be a great time to talk about like how it connects to Dead Reckoning. So how do you think it handled that?
Well, I mean, like we said, it had to go from one to the other. It was not an aspect of we're just going to not worry about it. Like it had to connect because
Yeah.
they committed too much to the entity and to Gabriel, and so they had to make it go from one to the other. And it made sense that it did. It just that's the biggest problem with the film. Like it's one like you have they've done this before. Obviously, they did it with the bad guy in forgetting Sean Harris, whatever his name was in Fallout and or in
Rogue Nation.
Rogue Nation. Thank you, Rogue Nation and Fallout. Like that makes sense. Like they brought him back because of what he was and all that kind of stuff. So I mean that made sense and that connected and that really worked. So that little serialization, those two and the obviously the Reckoning ones and those two are the most serialized, but it connects perfectly. I'm sure you could just stop one and pick the next one right back up, but it's too committed to the entity. It's just it connects perfectly. It just is a mistake to do so in the first place.
I disagree to say it connects perfectly. I think it connects rather massive to Dead Reckoning.
Okay.
I guess slight spoiler for Dead Reckoning. That movie ends with basically, hey, the other half of the key, we're going to go to the Sevastopol. And then this movie does not pick up straight from there. I'll just say that.
This is true. This is true. Like the big thing is they have to go to the submarine, and it takes an hour and a half for them to get to the submarine.
Yeah.
Like,
And I'm just like, get to the submarine.
Right, so, it's funny. I compared in my review, I compared it to being a video game. Like,
Yeah.
it's not, it's very video game plottish. It's not like, okay, the overarching thing, we need to do this. But first, we have to do the side quest. We have to get this key. We have to talk to this person because we have to go to the substation. Now, to the substation, we need this, and then there's this. We have this other side, and we need the Eskimos. All this kind of like it's seven things to get one thing, so you can get another thing, so you can go to the next thing. Like it's not like it's never eyes on the prize until we have all the other stuff first. It's very scattershot as far as what is actually being achieved for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is possibly the point where you could have. I mean, so I guess first things first, it drops the part 2, right? It's just the final reckoning. It is not the final reckoning.
It's not part 2.
Yeah. So I guess that changes some things, and I wish it changed more things, like the entity. I think you could almost explain it away in probably the cringiest way. Just say, oh, in the time that has passed between movies, it's just taken care of. And now
Luther took care of it. Yeah.
Yeah, like Luther took care of it or something like that. Because time does pass between these two movies. We'll get into it in spoilers, but where you could have just had Gabriel be the main antagonist, because he is for most of the movie. He is the driving force, not the entity. And anyways, I feel like I'm getting too much into spoilers. But yeah, so really quick, final rating for the movie?
Mine's 3.5 out of 5. Good movie. I have it 6th out of the 8.
Ooh, nice. I haven't ranked it among the 8 films yet. I would say this probably falls in somewhere between Rogue Nation and Fallout for me. 4 out of 5.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like as annoyed as I am with some of the things that they do with Dead Reckoning, that last hour just got me.
It really does. Really does. That last hour is pretty flawless.
Yeah, I am no better than any man. Google Brain works on me.
Yeah.
But with that, if you haven't seen Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning yet, and want to remain spoiler free, now's the time to pause this episode. Go to your local IMAX. If you've got a Dolby Cinema, that works too. Go see it. Come back. It'll still be here. But with that, consider yourselves warned. We're going to talk about spoilers now. So, first things first, let's talk about how it connects to the previous film. How did that work for you?
Well, I mean, we talked about the obviously the entity stuff and the Gabriel stuff. The funny thing about the Gabriel stuff is, yeah, Gabriel was such a factor in the first one, and he seemed like he was almost the driving force between it. And then this one is like him and the entity have beef. Like, I don't know what the hell that's about. Like, somehow Gabriel's on the outs. Like, he said something bad about ChatGPT, and then that that into the or whatever it is. Like, there's not really a good reason. I guess it's the entity wants to have total power, and Gabriel has human needs or whatever the hell it is. It doesn't matter. I don't care. But
Gabriel's too needy.
like Gabriel's he's too needy. Yeah, exactly. It's like it's always me, and not entity. Come on, guys. It's like, but that's very silly. But I mean, it gets it done. But you still have if there's like one thing that this film did the worst over anything else, is essentially anything they do with Luther. Like,
yeah,
I'm not even saying like, oh, he deserved better than that or whatever than that, but I mean, like, whenever he left at the end of Dead Reckoning, it made sense because he's just like, I got to give this everything I have, got to do this is I got to go underground and where it can't find me, all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, that on paper makes sense, but I was like, I don't like where it's going to head. Like, it's headed in a direction where I'm like, okay, what is this? And it meant that he was going to be the sacrificial lamb, but he was dying anyway. But that's never explained, and why he was dying or what he was dying of, and all the while, like, it's all just kind of like that's the part of it where I'm just like, you just got lazy and decided to go Deus Ex Machina on it and just be like, he was dying anyway, and we need a sacrifice, and the way they treat important deaths in this series has always bugged me.
Yeah.
Like, you have very important people dying at various parts, and Ethan should be affected by this. And he has like a 5-minute scene of being a little sad and then moves on. Like, go watch Mission Impossible 3 in the scene where it's being interrogated by Philip Seymour Hoffman. And I've argued that it's Cruise's best Ethan Hunt performance because it's his most emotional. And he is thinking his wife has been shot in the head, and he is destroyed, devastated. And essentially from then on, every time somebody is really close to him and dies, he just goes, oh, hon, that sucks. We got to move on. We got to save the world. Like Ilsa's death in Dead Reckoning is one of the worst things they did in that one.
Yeah.
And Luther's death in this one is just kind of like passed over. And, Alec Baldwin's death in Fallout is just kind of to the side. And like,
I forgot he died in that.
Yeah. It's exactly. And they killed Tom Wilkinson. They killed the former director in Ghost Protocol. So I mean, and half of the plot of Ghost Protocol has to do with agents being killed. Like, and so it's one of those things outside of Mission Impossible 3. Death just doesn't affect Ethan ever, and it doesn't make sense. He's supposed to be this superhuman, but I mean, that's kind of the part that kind of brought him back. And that's why I think Mission Impossible 3 is different than a lot of these other movies, because of that emotion. That emotion just isn't there. Like, Luther dies and he just is running away from the rubble. And Ilsa dies and he very quickly moves on to Haley Atwell. And it's very, it's like, come on, guys. I thought we were establishing this. But still, yeah, it's a large problem I have with. And if they were going to do that here, just kill Luther in Fallout. Like, that was almost So I don't know if you know this, but in Fallout initially it was supposed to be Jeremy Renner was going to come back.
Yeah.
And in the opening scene, Jeremy Renner was going to be in that scene and he was going to die. And Jeremy Renner said, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to come back. And so they put Luther in the position and they did not kill him. So and the entire plot of Fallout, the reason it is the way it is because he didn't want Luther to die. He was not cool with Luther dying. That was the entire thing. And then whenever his entire mechanism as being a spy is that he is not willing to accept the loss of one for the savior of many. And that's his entire thing. And as soon as that one person does die, he ho-hums and moves on to the next thing. And it's a very strange characterization.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah. And yeah, the whole Luther stuff in this movie's
very weird.
It's just like, okay, if he's sick, okay, fine. I'm willing to just, throw my brain out the window for this one franchise. I'll just throw my brain out the window and just tell me he got cancer in the 2 months that passed between the movies or something. Or just make him a nurse or something. And also, you're telling me that this guy who's on his deathbed, this one guy, cannot figure out a bomb, but he can figure out a 5D optical drive that can trap an AI in less than 100 milliseconds. Are you joking?
And not only that, you have that with the, it's you have to, the film asks you to have it wants you to have this level of the suspension of disbelief, but it also wants you to not have that suspension at the same time. Like, it's like, okay, suspend your disbelief because this is what's going to happen. And it's like, but then if you think about it for any half second, you're just like, okay, what is happening here? Like, it's like Luther is superhuman. He has been shown to be superhuman throughout the series. He found Ilsa based off of a sketch that Ethan made, like through facial recognition. It's like, what are we doing here? Come on, like, it's like, yeah, you can't defuse a bomb, and it's preposterous, and because somehow and it also kind of like screws with the bona fides of it kind of questions the bona fides of Gabriel, because his is never really established, but he can do shit that Luther can't fix. Like, it's very strange.
Well, and the other thing that pisses me off, there, Apple, throw the explicit mark on it. There you go. William Donlow comes back, by the way, from the first movie.
Yes.
And he's able to disable the bomb. I mean, not disable, but like within 10 seconds. But,
changes it a little bit. And I thought the same thing. I thought the same exact thing. I'm like, so Donlow, for some reason, he's been in a yurt for the last 30 years, but somehow he can fix things that Luther can't. Like, I'm not saying he is less capable, but we have established that Luther is one of the top hackers in the history of the world, maybe to ever exist ever. Like what are we doing here? Like, but regardless.
And then you have Benji fangirling over William Donlow in this. Like he's some sort of prodigy, when in the first movie we're led to believe he's like just another FBI or CIA agent.
Yeah, and he even does this, like, oh, you created the mainframe. And I'm like, well, that's not how that works, but okay. But like, sure, whatever.
IBM created the mainframe.
I know, but still, like, it's one of those things, like, the Donlow stuff didn't bug me as much because I did like Donlow and I liked his wife. I like those characters. I like having them around. And it's just like, you know what? If you're gonna have that callback, that's not a bad one. Like, I don't have a problem with that. It is convenient. It's extremely convenient. And the entire thing about being in the ice and all that kind of stuff is really silly and just kind of like circumstantial and all that kind of stuff. But it gives a good reason for Palm Clementef to kick ass and to introduce Donlow's wife, who we like, and all these kind of things. And, all that stuff had to get there eventually. So I do understand that, and I'm fine with the Donlow part. If you're talking about the callbacks that did piss me off, it's oh, your name's not actually your name.
Yeah.
You're actually John Voight's son from the first one. I'm like, shut up. I was like, suck it, man. Come on. It's like, this is a step too far. Like, what are we doing here? Like, you're telling, like, and I'm looking, and also, like, talking about suspension of disbelief and just talking about, it's like, oh, your dad was 7 or whatever. And I'm like, In what world is Shea Wiggum significantly younger than Tom Cruise? It's like Shea Wiggum and Tom Cruise are contemporaries. It's like, let's not get twisted here. It's like Shea Wiggum is not in his 30s. Like, so it's one of those things. Like, it's so they wanted to connect one. They wanted to connect. They wanted to connect a lot from one, and they wanted to connect three, which from the rabbit's foot, which didn't need wrapping up. The best part about the rabbit's foot, it didn't matter. We didn't need to know what it was. Yeah. And it turns out it wasn't. It wasn't anything. It was actually the entity. And I'm like, again,
the anti-god or something.
Below me again. Like this is now. Benji was the one who called it the anti-god back in the time. So it is the nice little callback to what Benji talked about, because that was really the first introduction to Benji as a character in this series. It's Halo one of those 5. Things. Playing Halo 5 during Rogue Nation. Yeah, that was fun. But it's one of those things where I get it, but at the same time, like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just said, oh, okay, well, where'd the entity come from? It's like, you have to over-explain everything, but you're not going to explain anything else. It doesn't make a ton. Like, you don't give any credence to Luther dying, but you're going to say where the entity came from. It's actually the rabbit's foot. And then it connected to China weirdly, and had it, like, connected it back to his ex-wife. And it's like, what? This doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, and I mean...
Anyway.
And it's very clear... through these Easter eggs, I think, or tiebacks, callbacks, whatever you want to call it, retcons, with the Jim Phelps Jr. crap. I think it became clear which Tom Cruise movie, which Mission Impossible movies Tom Cruise likes the best, because you get no Easter eggs from 2.
He's a big fan of 3.
You get no Easter eggs from 2, nothing from 4. Nothing from 5, nothing from Fallout. And obviously, this is a Fallout to Dead Reckoning. So,
well, I think I think he wanted to say something about, like, what his history was. Like, he's like, okay, so we want to like connect. Like, it's always kind of a Cruise, especially these last decade, has really been commenting, and him and McQuarrie specifically has really been commenting on his own star persona. In these old films. It's like, okay, so I am like, he's so, everybody keeps talking about his authenticity whenever he talks about his passion, or people talk about how much he likes talking to people and how zeroed in he is on people, and how much he actually doesn't seem to be bothered by any bit of the press. Like, he is so happy to be jet setting around talking about this movie and talking about various things, and talking interviews, talking about wanting to do musicals and all these kind of things, and talking about all these crazy stunts he does. And exactly. And avoiding all the negative and only focusing really on the positive. And I think that's kind of like, he looks at 1, he looks at 3, and he's like, this is where things were right. And I'm not going to harken back to 2, because if I harken back to 2, there's going to be questions about why were you kicking guys with doves behind you, and why were you so weirdly sexualized for like a 5-year period from 1998 to 2002? Like, you get to avoid those questions if you just talk about how much the passion was there and the final reckoning and all this kind of, like, and the guy is in his friggin' 60s, and it's never noted. And in mid-30s, Haley Atwell is fully on board. Mid-30, and this movie avoids as much of the weird, like, Tom Cruise and the women thing that he has throughout these movies. But it's still kind of there regardless. Like, no Vanessa Kirby showing up to kiss him for some reason. There's, Haley Atwell's there, but she never is direct. It's more implied than it is actually direct. It's all just kind of like, there's a lot he has on his mind that he doesn't need to necessarily, like, it's like, nobody's asked for this. Nobody's asked for, it's like, you know what, I'm going to say something about what people think about me visually. It's like, you know what, I'm going to have a scene where I have to prep for scuba training where I have to be shirtless. And does he look great? Absolutely. I want to look like that. Absolutely. But there is 0 point to have him in that movie. In that point, it's like you can run in a shirt. I'm pretty sure it's okay. Like, I don't.
Yeah, and there's so much I think I could say about these Easter eggs, and I think we'll probably get into them a bit more, but specifically. But I guess for now, let's cap off that part of it. And like, do you feel like, or maybe do you want to go just keep talking about Easter eggs? Because I can.
No, it's all right. I mean, like it's mostly just like the little things. Like I find them all, and I find them annoying in this film more than I do anything else.
Yeah, same. Because it's like if you do make, and this kind of neatly transition into my next question, but again, like if you make a Mission Impossible 9 or whatever, a new Mission Impossible, that isn't a reboot. That is a sequel to this movie. So much of the series is, or so much of there are so many callbacks in The Final Reckoning that it would be nearly impossible for them to make another one without doing some insane legwork. Instead of Tom Cruise this time around, he's leading the IMF, and now that he's leading the IMF, Benji takes his job.
Yeah, there's been Glenn Powell is there. Like I think there was some talk initially about like whenever Ghost Protocol showed up that it might be Jeremy Renner taking over anyway. Like I'm not sure. I don't know if that was ever actually the truth of it, and I know there's some murmurs and that kind of stuff. But I mean, like, I do agree. It feels like Ethan needs to not be Ethan anymore. It needs to like start. This series is such that if you kind of keep the general conceit of what's happening, you can kind of mine this forever. That's kind of why the TV show works so well, because you can just, story of the week. And this is the case. And the story of the week worked really well all the way till Dead Reckoning. So, I mean, it also got too big. Like the idea of
way too big.
We didn't talk about this in the fight. The entire plot is the fact that the entity is going to take over the world and launch nuclear weapons at itself and blow up the world. And so it's all that kind of stuff. Like it's like, okay, I'm not saying you need something smaller than that, because obviously that's big. But I mean, you're talking about like the threat of fallout was a nuclear blast that decimates a water system that would kill billions of people, and because of this, and like there was a close call with a nuclear weapon in San Francisco on the other one. So I mean, like it's always one of those things that does pop in as far as like mass casualty things could be a thing that happens, but it's never the entire world is literally going to end. Like, you need to take a step back.
Yeah, I agree. Wherever they go with this, next, I think, take a step back. Learn from. Go watch Black Bag. Because that is a very small movie. There is no end of the world things happening in that movie. It is just the study of a relationship amongst spies, amongst 3 couples of spies, specifically. You can do that with Mission Impossible. That's very easy, and you don't have to spend $500 million to produce it. That's easy $80 million movie.
And even like if you think about what Black Bag, the catalyst for Black Bag was it's like a thing that could cause a nuclear meltdown.
Yeah,
but it was not really taken all that seriously. Like it's not like they're not like, oh my gosh, we have to initiate shutdown. It's just kind of like, this thing's out there, we got to find it. And it's much more bureaucratic. I'm not saying that's what a new Mission Impossible movie has to be, but it doesn't have to be, holy crap, the world's going to end. Angela Bassett, which American city are you going to sacrifice for nuclear warheads? Which I saw an incredible tweet where somebody said that, there's a scene where it's just like, if we're going to bomb these major cities, we have to bomb an American city as a sacrifice, essentially. and they never name the American city,
Yeah.
but somebody said in a tweet, it's like without hesitation, she just goes San Diego, and I don't have any opinion about San Diego, but I did enjoy that. Just the idea of like no hesitation picking, it's like, you know what, screw Wichita, like, or whatever it is. Like, I love, I do love
Chicago.
Yeah, it's not even like it. I would want it more like obscure, just to be like, hey, what do you have against Minneapolis? Like, it's like New York, LA, Chicago. You're just like, well, okay, that's big city. It's like, you know what, Tallahassee's going down.
Yeah. And
anyway,
while we're talking about that, oh gosh, what was I gonna say? Oh, I had a realization in the shower the other day about that scene. That part of the movie, it feels very much like Independence Day. The whole third act of the movie feels like Independence Day.
Yeah.
Because to recap, the Tom Cruise journeys into the belly of the beast to receive some magical device that he's got to upload a virus to, and once he captures the virus and tricks the thing into doing the thing, humanity is saved. That's literally Independence Day.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it has those kind of connections, and you see kind of where it all comes from, and like it is all as silly as it all is. It does kind of work in a really. It's funny the things that come together, and the things even that last hour that I don't like. Like, okay, so it touches at the beginning of the movie about the people who are like there are followers of the entity who are like fanatics and like are a part of it, and they like there's a little like news clip of two people who are a little wide-eyed talking about it, and then they don't talk about it for 2.5 hours, and then all of a sudden the Secret Service agent is a part of it at the end. Like, it's just all kind of like, oh, how convenient. Not only a Secret Service agent, in the room at the end. You're just like, okay. But luckily, don't worry, Ron Swanson was there to save the day. But still, like, we all have and it's the cameos in this movie don't make a ton of sense. Why have Hannah Waddingham in there? An American accent, which I was like, what are we doing here? Like, now that being said, Skydance, big Apple people, and Apple people have a lot of. There's a reason you had Nick Offerman there. There's a reason you had Hannah Waddingham there. There's a reason you have the guy from whatever that show is that I don't watch. Severance. Yeah. There's a reason. There's a reason you have Trammell Tillman there, and like it's like corporate synergy and Warner and all that kind of stuff, and I get that. It just didn't need to be there. Like, I would rather have a Katie O'Brien when I'm just like, okay. Like, Katie O'Brien showed up for 10 minutes and I'm like blowing everybody off the screen. I'm like, cool. Can we have more of this as opposed to? And don't get me wrong, Trammell Tillman is great. Like, I thought he was really good, but like, why do you have Hannah Waddingham in this? She's in it for no reason. Like, you could have really just and sorry, before I go, but not even the most infuriating thing is having Janet friggin' McTeer. What are we doing here? Use Janet McTeer here and have her do nothing, absolutely nothing the whole movie. You have Janet McTeer, one of the greatest all-time screen on-stage presence, and you just refuse to give her absolutely anything to do. Come on, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it is frustrating, especially for me as somebody who watched Ted Lasso. I'm like, okay, this is a very corny American accent, and I guess that kind of brings me to two questions I had about it, maybe three. Like, what did you think that May 22nd, 1996 date was about? Because they're very vague about it. She's like, something bad happened this day.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, apparently me and you our paths crossed, and this meant something. And obviously, it obviously is a. What I was about to say? Do we know the official? What was the release date of Mission Impossible 1?
May 22nd, 1996.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That's really funny. Like, it's one of those like I didn't even think about that part, just because
It bugged me.
It there's like 96 is a very specific date.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, like, is it one of those things? It's like, it would turned out Emilio Estevez was Hannah Waddingham's dad, or so. Like, who's to say? Like, that would have been worse than everything else. Like, that'd have been just as bad as Shea Wiggum crap. But I mean, at least it would have meant something. Like, or it turns out that the the guy in the train, the conductor of the train, was Hannah Waddingham's dad, or something stupid, or whatever. Like, you could have
Like the Final Destination 2.
Yes, yeah.
They're like,
it's
spoilers, by the way, for Final Destination 2. But if you're listening to the spoiler of this, they're all like, "What is the connection? What is the connection?" And they're all like, "Well, we were all going to be like connected to Flight 180 somehow." And it's like, okay, this is a soap opera. This is a soap opera.
And they explain absolutely the goofy thing about this movie is how much they explain every little aspect until they decide not to explain every little aspect. Like, it's my problem with Tenet is they're like, okay, don't think too much about it, and then they explain every possible chance they get. It's like, do you want us not to think about it, or do you want us to specifically think about it? Like, you have to. There doesn't have to be both. You can either commit to one, and this film has a lot of every visual thing this film does exceptional. Every dialogue based thing this film does sucks. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah. And then getting to your cult thing, I actually was under the assumption, Ethan goes into that little pod thing at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this is like where the entity corrupts him, and that might be a really interesting way for the plot to go. And then they just forget about it.
Yeah. And that entire sequence to begin with, I was just like, okay, like, what's the point of this egg thing anyway? Like, who built this egg thing? Like, does the entity have a 3D printer? Like, it asks more questions than it answers.
Yeah,
and it's just. And not to mention everybody in Ethan's team's like, why are you going to get in that thing? That seems unnecessary. Don't do that. Like,
yeah.
and he's like, no, I have to. And then he gets in there and goes, I probably shouldn't have gotten in there, huh? Like, it's like, yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm like, if it's too much. It's too much. I think at the end of the day, like, if you need a resolution for that little thing, the little whatever you want to call it, just say like it got destroyed in the 2 months since, or something like that, or be like Luther's the one in the entity box thing, because I mean, maybe this is where I think too much about things, but I'm like, okay, how is the entity communicating with this box? Does it have Wi-Fi 8? Does it have does it have Wi-Fi Direct? Like the Xbox. Like, what technology are we using here?
This just harkens back to, like, they needed to fix the villain issue with Dead Reckoning. If they fix that, they can, and they want to serialize something into part 1 and part 2, cool. But the entity was a mistake. That's a mistake. They wrote themselves into a corner, and they had to get themselves out. Now they have themselves out, then they can move on from it. Like, at least the entity is gone. If they make 10 more movies, and they're like, all of a sudden there's the golden chapstick that pops up, that I'm just like, okay, well, the 5D jump drive, or whatever the hell that thing is. It's like, so I mean, but if that pops up, I'm gonna be like, okay, that's enough of this. So, but whatever, it's over now. It's annoying. Him hanging off a plane, pretty cool.
Yeah. And I guess that does bring us to the entity itself. Like, do we want to talk about the Sevastopol, that kind of thing, and the poison pill?
It's all pointless. I mean, it's all a means to an end. It's all the Schrodinger's poison pill. Like, it's you can't have, you got that poison pill, you have to use it going to be used. And, they they talk about responsibility and who needs to actually have this thing. And obviously it's Ethan's going to be the one with the responsibility and all this kind of crap. And it's just, okay, like, does anybody actually believe the world is going to come to the end at the end of this movie and Ethan's not going to win?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying Ethan's going to survive, but does anybody think he's not going to win?
I actually did think he was going to lose.
I didn't think he was going to lose. I thought he was going to win but die. I thought he might have died.
Yeah, I should probably clarify. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, Haley Atwell's the new star of the Mission Impossible franchise.
I thought that was the route they were going to take. And the fact that they didn't, just kind of like a cowardly thing of like, okay, well, we're going to leave the door open, even though it's final reckoning, and so, but the whole time they're just like, no, Ethan is the guy that does this differently. Ethan is the guy he has the responsibility, and he's the one who should be able to tell it, and the self-destructing part and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that, like, you need this thing from the Sevastopol, and you need the poison pill, and all this, like, all just kind of combining, and him kind of like half staggering as he's falling through air, and just like, okay, well, we all know he's going to do it. Like, it's the joke people keep making about this, about like, how many times is he going to, like, the fact that people are still like, Ethan Hunt can't be trusted. I'm like, how much more evidence do we need at this point? Like, come on, guys. Like, it's like, he has saved the world so many times, and he continues to come back, and he continues to do the right thing. But somehow we're just like, nah, this time he's going to prove us wrong.
Except for this time, he does the wrong thing. He has the entity. What the fuck?
He does. Yes, he does. I guess at the end of it, they're just like, well, he could. Yeah, that would be the thing. It's like all of a sudden he decides, it's like, you know what? I do want to rule the world. And that's really going to mess things up. But yeah, but whatever.
And I guess the other problem I had with it, just talking about the poison pill, because I think we've talked about the entity to death.
Yeah.
I think that this is where a lot of my frustrations with Luther's story come up, other than all the other shit. Is you're telling me that this one guy, not only, by the way, 5D optical drive, no physicist has ever figured that out, as they state very plainly in the movie. Not only that,
freak. Yeah,
he's a freak. But gosh, he somehow is able to outthink an algorithm, like, without the source code. Are you kidding?
Yep. It's just every time it feels like it feels like they work backwards. And whenever they work backwards, okay, this is the solution. Okay, so we need this and this combined. Okay, let's separate those two. Now so how do we get to there? And then, okay, well, so how do we know what he needs to get there? Why does he not have the poison pill? Why is this thing still this festival? Why does the poison pill go to Gabriel? Why do we need to care about Gabriel? Gabriel has the poison pill. Like, it's all just kind of like conveniences for the sake of plot purposes. It's not actually, doesn't feel real. Like, nothing about this movie feels real. And other of these movies, Fallout being the greatest example, it all felt realistic. Like, I'm not saying the apostles and all that crap, and the helicopters and the nuclear weapons, plutonium, all that crap. I'm not saying it was real, but it felt like down on street level. Like, it felt like this was happening, as opposed to this, where it's just like, come on, everything is just more preposterous than the last.
Yeah, and so I agree with you. It is all very preposterous, and I think because it is so long, I think the movie kind of dulls your senses. Like, okay, Skokas, whatever. He wrote like all the pieces out to the plot on a notepad at the beginning of the movie, whatever. He now knows everything, whatever. And in that way, it kind of felt a lot like Fallout to me, where it's just like, okay, whatever. It's just, let's get me to the end,
Yeah.
And, in that way, it just feels very, to use your word, preposterous. But my goodness, if that last hour isn't just pulse pounding, action fun.
Absolutely.
Now, that said, do I want to see Tom Cruise in return to the movie theater next year? No, I'm good on Tom Cruise for a while.
Okay.
I think he needs to take a break. Or I would love to see a break. That people asked for after Avengers Endgame came out, like that length of break. Just take a few years off. You clearly do not need the money, so just take some time off. You're obviously going to do Top Gun 3 next after your space movie. After you do those two, or whenever those two happen, I'm fine. You don't have to do anything. Mission Impossible can come back in 20 years. Sounds good. And honestly, I'd be fine if Mission Impossible came back with Haley Atwell. She's great in this.
I I feel like they dropped the bag with like I very much like you could have talked me into an Ilsa franchise a while ago, and then it's pretty obvious to me that Rebecca Ferguson didn't want to come back. That Rebecca Ferguson was uninterested in it anymore, which good for her, knowing when to quit. But that is the character more than any other. Like there have been like three characters throughout the whole series that have been like popped. It's essentially like Philip Seymour Hoffman in 3, Ilsa, and then like Henry Cavill. And besides that, like everybody else is like a lot of different characters that are in here. It's like Ilsa is the only character I'm like, dude, this lady is awesome. She has it all. Why don't we have this be a thing? And then they kill her off, and just like, okay. And then they like, you can't just kill her off. You have to replace her. And I like Haley Atwell, and I think she's a good actress, and I like what she does in these movies. But I'm uninterested.
Well, I didn't like any of the Dead Reckoning actors in Dead Reckoning. I liked them way better in this movie.
Okay.
Because it felt like they weren't doing that shtick anymore, especially with Tom Clementiff's character.
I thought she was great in this movie. I agree. I liked her in Dead Reckoning too. So who am I to say? But yeah, it does feel like, I don't know, like she's the one that should be the spy friend. And yeah, I mean, I do like the idea of like pickpocketing. Like there's something there, but I don't know. I'm of the belief of either you bring it back the way it is with Cruise and Simon Pegg, and make it not the final reckoning and add more people to it. I get that. That's fine. Or blow it up completely, or don't bring it back. I don't necessarily want spinoffs. I don't feel like this is. I know it is rife for the potential of spinoffs, but I don't want it.
Yeah, we don't need a Top Gun Iceman.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess I'll just mention one thing, and then we'll do our outro. We'll get out of here. We've all got busy schedules. Yeah, like I'm recording a Lilo and Stitch podcast tomorrow for the 2025. Yeah, that's going to be a drag because I hate that movie. But
it's not very good.
It's not very good. But they both have Hannah Waddingham in it.
They do.
But anyways, this is the last thing I'll bring up. I promise. Somebody has put out the theory that Elsa's still alive.
I have heard this theory, and I don't have a problem with it, but it also would make me furious, because why would they do that? Like, it's if she's still alive, like it makes sense if she's still alive. Oh, she was killed by a random bullet that no, she was stabbed by Gabriel, who wanted to kill her. Like, it's not like and it's one of those things like, is it a Nick Fury thing where, we actually slowed his heartbeat down to 1 beat per minute type thing? Like, okay, so like, it's like, I get, but we're not in that world. We're not in that world of fantastical. It's a different type of world. So I would love the idea of her still being alive, just because I need more Rebecca Ferguson in my life, but it's not something I think I would be okay with.
Yeah. I just thought throw it out there. I saw that online somewhere where she apparently shows up at the end, like the very, very end, or someone matching her hair type and body style shows up at the end. So
okay.
walking alongside.
Sure.
But I don't know. I need to see the footage, when they release this on home video, and they'll probably like release a 3-hour documentary on the making of the Final Reckoning, and they'll turn the camera around and it'll be Rebecca Ferguson or her stunt double or something.
Yep.
But anyways, but that's about it for our Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. I almost said Dead Reckoning there. Discussion, all of it. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment on Spotify. That's the thing you can do now, apparently, and review it wherever you can on your favorite podcast app. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Final Reckoning in the comments below, on Spotify or YouTube or wherever. On social media, I'm on Blue Sky at austinb.media. I also have a Discord that I've linked in the description below, and a Patreon community chat. And speaking of Patreon, just like early access to the next episode and more, head on over to patreon.com/austinbmedia. For $3, you get that 48-hour early access to practically everything I do, access to exclusive Patreon posts, the whole shebang. And then at the $10 a month tier, you receive uncut podcast episodes. So like basically untouched, unless we give out like sensitive info like our credit card or something, that gets cut out. So it's not quite uncut, and then monthly behind the curtain posts, exclusive podcast episodes. I think by the time this is up, I'll have a podcast episode up on Last of Us Season 2. I'm going to record that, me, myself, and I. And I'm going to have a monthly film club for $10 members. But Ben, where can they find you?
You can find me on the socials at nebisben, Nebisben. Neb is Ben backwards, obviously. That's where I am on all the socials except for Instagram, neb.isben, Blue Sky, Instagram, neb.isben, Letterboxd, Twitter, I guess. My website at icecreamforfreaks.com, the number 4 freaks.com. That's where all my writings are. You'll find this episode of this podcast, the other podcast I've been on, the features I write for, all my reviews. I also write for the Film Experience, Cinema Scholars, all over the place as well. You find me, my old podcast that I used to have and all that kind of stuff. So I'm all over the place. I am the David Thewlis of podcasting. So thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe we'll have you on in 20 years to talk about Mission Impossible 9.
There we go.
MI9. That actually does have a nice ring to it. Damn it. But I have been your host, Austin Belzer, and until next time.